saying things against the Christian religion the way it was run by the state of Prussia, Frederick the Great said like this, it's not necessary to ban the book. He says nobody can read it. It's not necessary to ban the book. You know what I'm saying? And he found somebody read it for him because he said he can't read in German. And he finds somebody, and he does get the arguments. As you'll see in a minute, I'll take 2 minutes to read through this. V'shama holich b'chol madinos, and his fame resounds now throughout the whole world. V'kosev b'reishi sifro, and he writes at the beginning of the book, Shu kori hadoros meirosh, that he says, I'm attacking the kori hadoros meirosh, Aristotle, as I'm attacking philosophy as it's been from day one till today. V'chol ha-filosofim hakodmi alav v'gam la'achronim, the early and late philosophers, philosophia darze l'kulam b'shem yikra, and he tells them all by name. Sheyavo v'yagidu lo machitz b'chakaros m'chom avsei moyuni. Let them all come and do their shtick. Let each one tell what he has demonstrated. Okay, let's see what Thomas Aquinas has to say. Let's see what this one has to say. Let's see what Albertus Magnus. But Mesha Achar Teva Nikra Metaphysics. I want to hear what each one has to claim that they are able to be mechadish in the area of metaphysics. And what they've produced is undoubtedly verified metaphysical statements and proofs. Savi Yagishu Olav, who wrote Movi's Lister, and he's going to prove them all wrong. He can show that they all went off the intellectual derech. And therefore it was all wasted time. So anybody who's read anything from philosophy the last 2,000 years, he says it's just wrong. It's just wasted his time. Wolf, Leibniz, and he says it's particularly about the two most famous leading German philosophers of the 1700s, Leibniz and Wolf. Moses Mendelssohn, who was a contemporary of Kant and a friend of his, was perhaps one of the two or three leading, besides being a Jew, he was one of the two or three leading philosophers in Europe at that time. He was a Leibnizian, if you want to be technical, a Leibniz-Wolfian, okay? Which there is such a thing. And he wrote books that were read by people all over Europe on these kind of, and here comes this guy, and so I guess the whole thing is tovavo. On the basis of a critique of pure reason, right? Now just studying what the word knowledge and reason means. What is the definition of epistemology? How do we know what we know? Define the word know. And I'll just read you one example of this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. To try to use human intelligence, to understand, to know, I should say, things that are not subject to sensory perception. But anything which is metaphysical, we human beings do not possess these kind of tools, if we're honest. We have nothing to say on the soul and of the intellect, which the Rambam has a lot to say on, and the Aristotelians wrote tons of books. The Rambam has whole chapters on the active intellect and what happens when you die, and when the body goes here, and the whatever survives of the soul goes and dissolves into the active intellect to be reinvested in another. All this stuff, he says, is made up. In other words, you can't use the language of no. You can use the language of, I made it up. You can use the language of, I think, if you want to be charitable about it. There's no truth. In other words, what I'm talking about over here is define the word truth. We don't know. I emphasize the word know when these things are. If you don't know, then how can you speak about it? Otherwise, show me what it is. You can't use any of the methods of trying to ascertain something scientifically. In the same way that that an uman, craftsman, can't make shoes or anything else without the tools. A scientist can't speak of metaphysical matters without the tools, and therefore abandon it. And as you see over here, I've blocked out whole areas over here which are actually fascinating. Let me conclude with the author's conclusion over here of this passage. I call upon you, the reader, the intelligent reader. Think about what I just said. And pay attention. This is Gavaldik. Has anybody ever come along with such a crushing critique of metaphysics, metaphysical philosophy as this guy Kant? He's Gavaldik. When I found out about this, I raised my hands to God, Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, She'egia ha'es v'ha'ona, lahavir darchi ha'yunim min ha'aretz, u'mosi philosophy korisi koris and afil benumas. I thank God, I said, we've wiped out metaphysics, which has been a stumbling block for religion, and especially for the Jews, he says, for thousands of years. So this guy is a real Haredi, but he is coming to Kant to destroy philosophy. Ve'emes me'eretz titzmach v'shamayim v'tzedek mishamayim l'sakin be'emunah v'das Hashem, and therefore truth is arising out of the earth and from the heavens, that the only way to know God, min ha'makubolos v'ha'mesoros me'obos alev banim, only through, as I said before, Mesorah. V'yaf ata kari chaviv, and therefore I tell you, dear reader, harchik mi'ata min philosophy v'chakiros, stay away from all these matters of philosophy and chakiros, metaphysical speculation. Pereu al tavrabo, don't go near it. Ki rotz Hashem b'yamo she'aminu mo, because all what God wants is she'aminu bo mitzana mekubolos levad. That God only wants you to believe in from the mekubolos, from the Mesorah. You see, as I've demonstrated over and over again. So we have, as I said before, an interesting situation where the Yahteit Naman is quoting Kant against philosophy, but that's not actually funny if you know who Kant was, or at least in his most important book. I'm not going to discuss the others, but most important book, which is the Critique of Pure Reason. Now, when I heard this in the talk, I connected the dots. This is what I think, obviously. I started out speaking to the Reb Elchonon Wasserman, and it's kind of funny that someone like Reb Elchonon would be interested in philosophy. No, it's not. He didn't say he's interested in philosophy. What did we say? The book he kept with him all of his life, and when he was in Telshe and Baranovich, was Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. It jumped at me. He wasn't interested in Kant's critique of practical reason and the other books, because those are nuts. No, it's not funny. I'll tell you what I mean by that. In his critique of practical reason, he looks for a totally logical basis for ethics and action. And he comes up with weirdisms. And Reb Elchonon Wasserman was killed by these weirdisms. I'll read you just one thing that I picked over here by a guy who wrote a book called Kant in 90 Minutes, which he lied, but anyway. He says, but he's discussing over here his work, as I say before, on practical reason, the praktischen Vernunft. And he has an imperative, a categorical imperative, that's very famous, often quoted. You just feel that you have to do something that's right, act only in accordance with a principle which you at the same time will to be universal law, whatever that means. But listen to this. The author who studied this says, Kant stated that the moral worth of an action should not be judged according to its consequences, but only insofar as if it was done for the sake of duty. Who said that? Eichmann. I'll read it again. Kant stated that the moral worth of an action should not be judged according to its consequences, but only insofar it was done for the sake of duty. I can guarantee you, I can't guarantee, that's ridiculous, but you understand, I can speculate that the people who said, let's go kill this guy, Wasserman, felt that they're totally in accordance with the critique from the praktischen Vernunft. You understand? Kant's ethical system also led him to believe that we should never tell a lie, regardless of what consequences this might involve. Do you agree with that? Do you agree you should never tell a lie, regardless of what consequences this might involve? My mother wouldn't have made it through the war, to take one example. Now think about that. He was well aware of the implications of the argument, but he stuck to it nevertheless. He said, to tell a falsehood to a murderer who was in pursuit of a friend of yours who was taking refuge in your house would be a crime. That's right. So before we deify Kant as a destroyer of metaphysics, we understand, or at least it's not